So now, for our next panel, do we have Ms. Deborah Simpson, CEO of SeedMax X here? Deborah, are you in? You are here. Okay, wonderful. Well, you, along with Candace M. Butler, Business Development and Relationship Manager at Patterns Hiring, we've got you next for a fireside chat. And you can even make this a little more interactive with the audience if you'd like. These ladies are going to be sitting chatting with us on global accountability, ensuring effective protection for medical workers in conflict regions. Round of applause for these ladies. Just you two.
Hi, my name is Deborah Simpson. I'm the CEO of CMedics. Very excited to be here. I do understand that there's tremendous conflicts, specifically the United Nations passed in 1998 passed a law that said hospitals are no war zones, they're off limits, etc. Well, that in 2014 made a sharp turn because I believe in South Sudan, a group came in and they killed anybody that didn't give them anything. They killed them. So 14 people died. So the reality is, in today's society, we need to do something. We need to have some kind of interference and really help our medical workers and make sure that they're protected.
And I totally can y'all hear me? Okay. And I totally agree with that. I kind of just wanted to give a definition of what a violent conflict is. A violent conflict is when two or more parties use physical force to resolve competing interests or claims. So, really understanding as our healthcare workers are going into these different areas, preparing them for what they're going into physically, mentally, culturally, preparing them to go in, and also when they come out, making sure that they have the resources and the sources that they need coming out because they go into some very hard situations. I also want to highlight that conflict regions are not only in other countries, we have conflict regions here in the United States, such as prison inmates getting out, getting acclimated back to the world. So as we delve into this conversation, I will ask everybody just to keep an open mind and really hear and absorb because this affects everybody. If it affects one person, it affects all of us.
All right. Um, Overall, there's a tremendous conflict within the government's ability to enforce, like the Geneva Convention, the what the United Nations says. There you need to have a lot alliance between the governments and safety of our medical
Mhm.
workers. I have two doctors and that work with me, and amazing, brilliant people. And they have said one. We've worked with NASA. I was on the board of directors at the NASA incubator, and we met. And he talks about hot zones. Hot zones are where there's violence, there's combatants as well as civilians, um, and uh, the warm zones and then the cold zones. So there's all three types of zones that you have to go into. And I think one of the key things is what I was stressed. They told me over and over again, you have to have contingency plan A, contingency plan B, contingency plan C. There was one medical worker that I think was in Africa. That he was 21. He drove a four wheeler and he drove the four wheeler off the cliff and split it and rolled down several times. And so the medical workers had to get in there, and the process of pulling him out took so long. And many of these things, like crush or sepsis or any of those things, they have to be treated within a very short period of time. I think I was told 6 hours, whether that's right or wrong. Um, I don't know because I'm not a medical doctor. But very important that we get our medical workers out when there is a conflict.
Mhm.
And that's always a problem.
Mhm. And I just wanted to kind of bring some stats into conflict. So, 1 out of 6 people are estimated to have been exposed to conflict so far in 2024. 50 countries rank in the index categories for high extreme, high or turbulent levels of conflict. And some of those countries that we've seen increases in 2024 includes the Ukraine, Mexico, and Palestine. Mexico is right close to Texas. I'm from Texas. I've personally seen people trying to get over the borders. If you're in the news, you'll hear they've been trying to cut the border lines down. There are people running, trying to get out of these situations. And our workers, from the time even from them crossing the border, so the Border Patrol to the people who are running the shelters and the temporary homes, have to be prepared for people coming out of conflict. And if you are a person that served others, you also understand you have to be prepared because it's going to weigh heavy on you. I am not a doctor or nurse, but I grew up in a family where it's healthcare or education. I personally worked in the pharmacy sector, medical billing coding, like everything that did not involve blood because I don't do blood. But the service piece, right? And so I saw the nurses, and even though I didn't physically touch the patients, I saw the nurses and I had to comfort and talk to the nurses and remind them what they're in there doing it for. So we have to have the mental, the physical, the spiritual, the emotional support. We have to teach them how to how to resolve conflicts, emotional intelligence, empathy, kindness, being able to really understand where somebody's coming from. And sometimes it's just being a ministry of presence. It's just listening to that person, you know, and letting them get that out because there's so much going on. They're running for their lives. A lot of them have to left their homes and they're sick. And like she was talking about all the different medical conditions, we just don't know what we're encountering. And just because it doesn't look like they've been through something, does not mean they have not been through something. So we, as a community, need to make sure that both sides are equipped. We talk about having resources for the patients. We have to have double the resources for the employees who deal with these patients. I remember during COVID, the shortage in the mask. I work in like supply chain, so they didn't have masks. And how do you go into these countries and you don't have the mask? COVID, everybody's already having a mass panic attack about COVID and everything duly right. So our people have to be prepared in all of those aspects in order to be effective.
Great. Overall, from how do we solve this problem? Like, for example, what did they do in Gaza? They built all the terrorist tunnels under the hospitals because they're not supposed to be attacked.
Mhm.
And so it's a violation of international law, which is generally out there, but it's not followed. And that's the really scary part because it isn't followed. And what we need to do as a society is we need to have accountability. We need to document these attacks. Let me give you an example. I was just in Switzerland. Okay, I'm driving the 7 o'clock train uh, uh, from Zurich to Geneva. The next day, that train was taken over by terrorists.
Mm.
Now, you don't see anything in the press about what happened because the Swiss just jumped in. They didn't ask him to drop the knife and the gun. They just shot him in the heart and killed him
Mhm.
instantly. You never heard about it in the press. You never heard about any of that stuff, but it happens all the time. So there has to be accountability and everything has to be documented because we're not going to get change unless we can have documentation. In Sudan, they did this. In Sudan, they violated human rights. The ability to, live and help and medical professionals I just can't tell you. I work with them. They are the most caring, loving, devoted people that you'll ever work with, and smart, hell of a lot smarter than I've ever been. Just absolutely brilliant in their area. C Medics provides a remote, non-invasive solution for heart failure. And so we want to get that in all these areas, but we can't do that unless we go in with the documentation,
Mhm.
support, and there is conflict. There's conflict regions, and everything has to be documented and completely accountable to everyone.
Totally agree. And it's funny that you mentioned Switzerland because actually, in my research, Switzerland is the most freest place to go. But it's because they just take care of it and they don't report it. They just come in and they just take care of it. But we need people to document and report so that we can actively make change. Because if it's not documented, how are we supposed to know about it? Like, how can we take this data and know, for example, how many people to put in an area. What type of areas is, and we can look at trends, like noticing where certain things are happening. But if there's no documentation, then we don't have that information. And if we don't have that, there's not going to be any transformation. You got to have documentation in order to have implementation, you got to have documentation. You got to have those things, or nothing is. No transformation, no implementation. None of that's going to happen. Like you, I'm not a medical professional, but I grew up around it, worked in the hospital. It's personal to me. In my work, I work for a staffing agency, so I partner with HR. I run side. I've been besides the doctors and scribes because I want to make sure I have a real understanding as I'm staffing roles. In my diversity consulting, I look at the diverse talent pools and where you're getting talent from and things like that. And all of those factors affect all of this.
And overall, the operational research that we create from this. I mean, what are we going to do about it? We're just going to, let people attack hospitals, let terrorists go in and or other people go in and kill people left and right. That's just absolutely wrong. So, an intervention of what the risks and the benefits in the conflict area will allow us to pressure governments to live within the United Nations rules and except NATO and everyone
hmm
else.
hmm
So, did you have something else you want to add, or we can start asking questions?
I just had one more thing to add. So, as we're talking about conflict regions outside of America, we have conflict regions here inside of America. We have marginalized community. I came from a marginalized community. That's a conflict region. So, while we're taking care of everyone outside of America, make sure we're taking care of the people here, people from marginalized communities, people who are victims of domestic violence have to be totally replaced, people coming out of the correctional system, they need that same support that we are providing other countries. So as we take care of other countries, we also must take care of home.
Exactly. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So, what kind of questions can we answer?
Mhm. So I'll take that one. So Haiti is in the top 5 where conflict regions that's going on right now. They're in the top 5. Actually, there are U.S. people there. And it's interesting and great that you bring up this point. So, as I was preparing for this subject, um, there are some U.S. people that were able to advocate to have a peace day where people can get their vaccinations and things like that. So, that's another thing we have to prepare our people for because sometimes we are the peace bringer and we have to go into these hard situations, put our lives online. Anybody that works in the medical field, anybody who's in the military, anybody who's volunteering job corporate, any of those places, they put their lives down every time they step out to make an impact and to make a difference, because sometimes it takes us to be that peacemaker for those changes to happen. And in one of those situations, they had a peace day where they were able to get kids vaccinations, so kids and seniors vaccinations and things like that before the war started back. So both parties actually agreed. But we do have people in Haiti, we do have programs that you can fund to support the people that are there.
And also, I think one of the issues is when you do send money to Haiti, a lot of times it goes to corrupt,
Mm,
goes into corruption,
mhm,
and it never gets to the source. Now, there are many ways around that that you can work with and actually make sure that it goes into various organizations. I work with the World Chamber of Commerce. Solange is the CEO and a close friend, and they have trouble all over worldwide, and we're there to help her whenever we can. Again, plans, contingency plans, next contingency plan, next, because it's so hard from a medical perspective to get these people out if they're in. And I talked about hot zones. So they go into a hot zone, but most of they'll generally probably go into a warm zone. Okay. What happens is sometimes those warm zones immediately turn hot. Okay. And now you have a crisis situation with our medical personnel that really need that help. And and so it's up to us to step in and maybe do sanctions,
mhm,
something. But we have to have the documentation, the accountability, the risks and the management. We got to have that information so that we can make a difference. And a lot of times it seems like the U.S. is the one that's dropped on it to jump in and make a difference. I think that's because we're an entrepreneurial country,
mhm,
driven by entrepreneurs, and we know how to think outside the box. I've been a part of many, I guess, 4 medical device exits, and it's all about the people saving lives and making a difference. And to me, it's so appalling that our medical people go out there. They take the risk over and over again, not because they want to, but because they're driven to
mhm,
save
mhm,
lives,
mhm.
and they need to be protected by us. And right now, the system's broken.
Yes, it is.
It's absolutely broken, and it's kind of scary because they're not paying any attention to anything that anybody says. Um, when the terrorists come in, I mean, it's not just terrorists, but the governments need to step in and make a difference. And frankly, I was very impressed with the way the Swiss handled the situation. It was no nonsense, quick,
Mhm,
fast, no media. He didn't get put, up on the press as oh, gee, he attacked, uh, created hostages on a train. He didn't get any kind of glory, any kind of anything, and I think that's one of the mistakes that we also make. So anyhow, what are some other questions?
mhm. So I can kind of personally speak to that one because I have family members that were in the military or were did mission work in some of these areas. They do get counseling. One of the things they get counseling, which is great. I don't think they get the time to really just embrace what they've seen. I've talked to several people like they have nightmares and dreams, and it doesn't go away for weeks, months, or years. Or sometimes they black it out to try to forget it, and then it comes up like in all the actions that they're doing. So they do get that support for PSCD. They also get financial support. They do get the mental support, um, getting them back acclimated in the community. A lot of times they have a lot of anxiety, social anxiety, don't want to come outside the house. Um, gain weight from eating or lose weight because they're not eating. Like those traumatic experiences really cause so many issues. And it's important that we take accountability and we fund those things. Like we spend money as Americans funding other things, but what about those people? What about them coming back? And like we ask them they're all right. They say yeah, and we kind of like leave them go, but they're really not because nobody who's worked over there is really okay. They just need the time to process it. And when they're open to talk about it, then we need to have that support. We need to have support before they go with the counseling, understanding the culture they're about to go into, the different types of people, the things that go on, like making sure they understand what they're about to walk into. They need the quick response training so they don't freak out, because they got to stay calm to be able to figure out how to work around in these situations. You don't have the mask, you don't have the proper supplies, the surgical tools you may need. You don't have those things. So you got to be able to think outside the box and stay in a place of calmness and stillness so that you can accomplish that. Great question.
So what other questions do we have? What other questions do we have? It's hard to see with the light.
I know it's kind of
Yeah,
hard to
I
see,
know. So if anybody,
but I do want to talk about in the United States. So we have conflict regions here, are marginalized communities, making sure they have access to food, access to health care, access to schooling. Our prison system, when people get out, they're basically thrown just resources and nobody really to just walk them through the system. It's the same when people come into the country. We have to just not throw them a bunch of resources. We have to be able to partner and walk through them. So recently, I actually have the experience working with people who have been incarcerated and coming back out and just listening to them, like simple things, for example, like we're used to everything. Say, oh, here's a phone and here's this, but they've been gone a long time and the world is very different in there than it is here. Just like the people in the other country, it's very different there than it is here. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to get out of ourselves and really just be like a blank slate in order to be able to absorb where they are, meet them where they are, so that we can help them move forward.
exactly. I'm sure we have. There's got to be more questions. Any more questions?
Yes. Hmm. They have some, not enough. It's not enough, and the funding too. So that's where funding comes in the issue too. Um, I'm looking into like volunteer services, getting people like Jasmine who spoke earlier to come in. She was talking about the autism, and a lot of times people that have been in the military they have autism, and it's not been diagnosed. So like those underlying things too. So this is great that we have this global platform to be able to get with people that we could all come together in unity to make a change because the system is broken. We've all identified that, but we all have to take accountability and not hone on the fact that it's broken, but put all our energy into how we can make it different and then be the change that we want to see. Yes, different thing, holistic medication, all different types of things, just not just one perspective. Okay, don't give me just a bunch of pills. Help me walk through these things. There are a lot of holistic medications, holistic approaches that can help people. Hmm. Hmm. Because somebody takes your security, like when this stuff happens on both sides, the person that it's happening to and the person who's helping, that security, that trust and that security is broken. It's the same thing as somebody. I'm a advocate for domestic violence because I'm a victim of domestic violence, and I still get nightmares. Somebody gets too close in my space. Like I still have reactions from that. And I know people who have PSTD that still have reactions like that. And I want to say for our elderly people that come out of these situations, some of them have the mindset they don't ever open up and talk about it, but it's the things that they do. So we have to be sensitive in when we're talking to people. We have to meet them where they are, assess them, meet them where they are in order for those changes to happen because everybody's coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, and we all have to adapt and come together. Great question.
I think too the stigma that's attached to the mental health program that comes in is so um, negative. and we have to get over that. Think about the military. When you come back from a combat zone, you're usually a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even a month, where they decompress you.
Yes.
They go through and they analyze you, and it's required. And our medical workers, um, they don't have that kind of training, and they should.
Mhm.
So maybe a program that comes in when they come out of a conflict, where they can actually get that care, and they're not going to get the stigma because everybody has to do it.
Yeah.
And
Make it a requirement so nobody feels
exactly,
singled out.
exactly.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Do we have any? I can't hardly see this light. It's kind of hard. Do we have any more questions? Any more thoughts? Anything you would like to ask or add?
I think if we work together with the United States, most powerful nation in the world, we can make a difference. And that's what this is all about. The medical people, my cousin was a cardiologist in New York City, died in a fire, and I can tell you he devoted his life 24 hours a day to helping people. And a lot of people sue doctors. We don't do that just because we have doctors in the family, and they do work around the clock, and they do make a significant difference. And so, protecting those medical workers is so important to society overall. And PTSD is very common, even with the COVID conflict.
Mhm.
Many of our doctors went through PTSD. Did they have the mental health, the support group where they had to go through a decompression or anything like that? Absolutely not. They had to figure out how to deal with it themselves, and they did. I mean, they are brilliant, and but it's a tremendous, tremendous challenge for many people to take on the consultant. I mean, the consulting, the decompression, all of that kind of stuff to really truly understand how the conflict is with these medical workers and how we can resolve it so we can still enjoy the tremendous knowledge and benefits that doctors all provide.
And not just doctors or nurses or CNAs or LVNs, our environmental services people, because they're all important. I staff a lot of these modalities, and I ask about mental health. How are they as a person? Because sometimes we get so caught up in what they can do, we forget to ask. Sorry, we forget to ask how are they. And so when I'm talking to different hospitals and staffing, I ask about the culture, I ask about those different things, and I get feedback from the people that I'm staffing. One of my very close personal friends, she's a OBGYN, ex-husband's a trauma surgeon, so I talk to them a lot to just kind of see what's going on and how people are just actually feeling. Do you know that doctors kill themselves? Suicide rates went up during COVID, um, between doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, because they had no way to release all of it. They were picking up all of it, but no way to release it. And with the shortages that we have in our healthcare system, we have to do better in the mental, the whole person, not just, oh, I'm the doctor, I'm the provider. Remember, they are somebody's parent, somebody's son or daughter, and they are human just like us. We all bleed red. We are all human. Yes. Not much. And I actually research this because I love researching. I like to know. Knowledge is power. And if you don't have knowledge, you can't make an impact or help. So, no, not enough. There was some documentation of things, but definitely not enough compared to some of the stories that we've heard. So, to answer your question, not enough documentation.
And I would agree 100%.
No, this is great. Yes. Yes. People were fleeing to the United States before COVID hit, and right when it hit. Now, I do think this is an opportunity where we can use AI maybe to help collect some information, make it easier to document some of this information. So I do think there's opportunity for innovation in this space where AI could possibly help us, make a device or something that's really quick to like voice document like certain things and be able to take those take that information, put it in an algorithm, have it where it's in an AI technology to be able to collect it. So I do think there's room for innovation that can help, but that takes everybody partnering together to do so.
Exactly. Go ahead. Did you have a question? I guess not. I think overall, I'd just like to say we can make a difference. You know, we are entrepreneurs in the United States. We do think outside the box, which is highly unusual in other countries, which I've been very surprised at. But there's several things that can make the change here, and that is everyone having tenacity. You make a difference with tenacity, and then you have to be coachable, okay? And to create that passion. And that passion just attracts other people. And together, I believe we can absolutely make a huge difference worldwide.
And as we're closing, I totally agree with that. I will also like to say, remember, one of the things that I say is that we all bleed red. So we have to embrace different diversity, different races, gender, sexuality. Everybody has a space and a purpose that can help. So we have to check ourselves. There's an expression that says, check yourself or you wreck yourself. You got to check yourself before you wreck the nation and wreck this very thing that so many people have died to build. So we must check ourselves, check our perspectives before we can really solidify together in unity and community and make the impact that we are here to make.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think I read the best came last, right? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Right.
Great job. I know, right? You can't even see what's going on half the time. It's actually kind of fun. Just kidding. Guys, how's everybody feeling? Great job to all of you for being here. You could be anywhere right now, gambling, 99-cent buffet, but you're here. You're committed to learning and growing and seeing this to the end. I applaud you. Let's have a round of applause for each other, our peers. And let's just get up real quick and maybe just kind of shake it off a little bit, right? Stretch. We've got two more very insightful panels coming up, and then we will we'll finish off and keep networking outside. So, very good. Way to stretch it out. Oh, I like that. That was a mighty thing there she did.